Welcome. You're here now, and there's nothing else you need to do. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts slow down. You've carried enough today, and now it's time to rest. Together, we'll drift gently into another life, a quiet journey through memories softly shared, a story woven with courage and wisdom, love and loss, echoing gently from a time long past. There's nothing to hold on to, no burden to carry. Let the words flow like calm waters, guiding you softly into stillness. And now, we begin. I was 10 when the world opened, not suddenly, not violently, but like waking slowly from a dream into a place where everything was changed, where even familiar things felt new. I stood at the edge of our fjord, barefoot on stones smoothed by endless tides, watching mist curl from dark water, like smoke rising from hidden fires beneath the sea. The wind brushed past gently, soft as my mother's hand. It spoke in whispers, words without sound, meanings just beyond my grasp. No one else heard it. Not the other children who chased each other along the shore, their laughter bouncing off cliffs and vanishing into sky. They swung sticks, imagining swords, but the sea's voice never reached them. I felt no sadness in being apart from them. Just a quiet knowing that I was different, marked somehow by a question I couldn't yet form. Days later, the stranger arrived, appearing through morning fog like a figure woven from mist itself. He wore rough furs from lands unknown, and his eyes held secrets. He looked at me once, directly, and said quietly to those who gathered around him, "The world is waking." His voice wasn't loud, yet it echoed inside my bones. I wondered then if he too could hear the sea's silent whispers. It was shortly after he arrived that I found the sword. It lay half buried on the shoreline, rusted and forgotten, waiting as if left deliberately for the right hand to find it. Its weight surprised me, heavy with histories I could not know, its metal cold and sharp, even beneath corrosion. Not a gift, this sword was a warning. My father saw me carry it home. He said nothing, but his eyes spoke loudly. They showed no pride, only quiet dread. That night, he began preparing. Not quickly, not loudly, but with a grim determination that filled our small house. He oiled ropes, tested sails, sharpened blades, each action careful and deliberate, each silence deeper than words could reach. I watched him, feeling childhood slip away like sand through fingers tightened by unseen fears. The entire village soon mirrored his quiet urgency, each home bustling softly, each family gathering supplies, each heart preparing for something no one named out loud. Then the day came. We stood together at dawn, by the ship built from our forest's ancient trees. Its wood was familiar, yet standing aboard felt strangely foreign. Men gathered silently around me, their faces carved deep by wind and time, each one marked by journeys past. My father took his place at the prow, gazing forward, never back. When the ship creaked from shore, my heart surged with both fear and exhilaration. The fjord shrank behind us, our village dissolving into mist and memory. Ahead lay the open sea, vast, boundless, speaking softly, always softly, inviting us to test our courage. I gripped the rail tightly, the sword at my side a comforting weight. Salt spray stung my face, the wind pushed at my back, and suddenly I knew clearly what the stranger had meant by the world waking. It meant this: to leave behind the known, to face uncertainty without flinching, to let go of childhood dreams and step boldly into the lives we were meant to live. My father stood unmoving, his strength steadying us all, and I realized, in that quiet moment, that he too had once felt this way, young, untested, yet certain that answers lay beyond the horizon. And thus began my journey, not across water alone, but into a deeper understanding of myself. I was no longer merely a child, but a traveller, setting out upon the sea's ancient test. The sea taught quickly, lessons written in salt and spray, in hunger and cold. Days blurred into a rhythm, waves rising and falling beneath us, the sky shifting endlessly above. Each sunrise felt like renewal, each sunset a gentle farewell. I watched the older men closely, learning without speaking, following their careful movements, absorbing their quiet strength. They spoke rarely, their words sparse, each syllable weighed carefully. Yet when they did speak, their voices held truths deeper than any tale I'd heard by the fires at home. My father spoke least of all, yet his presence filled the ship, steady as the timbers beneath our feet. I watched him navigate storms with quiet certainty, never raising his voice, never showing doubt. And though he said little to me directly, I understood clearly. He was preparing me for more than sailing, for more than raids or riches. He was teaching me how to be. One night, a fierce storm found us. It roared from the horizon, devouring stars, swallowing the moon whole. Waves rose, towering above the mast, and men who had stood silent and strong shouted urgently to each other, their voices strained but unbroken. I clung to the ropes, fingers numb, breath ragged, every muscle burning as we fought to keep our course. My father moved calmly through chaos, steadying ropes, barking orders with a clarity that cut through the wind's fury. I felt pride surge in my chest even as fear tightened my throat. When morning finally broke, it revealed a battered ship, torn sails hanging limp, faces etched deep with exhaustion. Yet we were alive. We had survived. I stood quietly, watching the men repair the damage, offering silent prayers for those who had not made it. I saw clearly then what it truly meant to be tested, to find strength you didn't know you possessed, to carry losses without breaking. Land appeared not long after, rising from the horizon, dark cliffs edged by dense forest. We approached cautiously, anchor dropping softly offshore. My father led a small group ashore, returning with cautious eyes and measured words. We were not alone. When we stepped onto the beach, my feet sank into sand untouched by any I had known before. Its grains felt sharper, the air held scents unknown, earth, pine, something richer, darker. I felt curiosity and apprehension wrestle silently within me. We moved through dense woods, each sound exaggerated, every movement cautious. The forest seemed watchful, whispering softly in the breeze. We soon found signs of those who lived here, paths worn by use, fires cold and carefully buried. Then we discovered the settlement. Silent huts stood empty, meals abandoned, objects scattered hastily, lives interrupted abruptly. Unease settled over us, thick and heavy, each man gripping his blade tightly, eyes scanning shadows for unseen threats. We retreated to a clearing nearby, lighting fires cautiously, voices hushed as we debated what we had found. Nightfall brought a deeper silence, stars cold and distant, the world around us holding its breath. Sleep would not come easily. I sat awake, gripping my sword, eyes searching the darkness. I wondered about those who had lived here, their stories, their lives, and why they had vanished so suddenly. Morning broke tension with movement, figures emerging carefully from the trees, cautious yet unafraid. Their leader, older and steady, stepped forward slowly, raising his hand in greeting, eyes meeting my father's evenly. They spoke quietly, each word measured, careful, testing trust. Eventually, cautious smiles formed, agreements quietly forged. We had found peace, fragile yet real. Days passed in gentle companionship, exchanging cautious stories and careful kindnesses. I learned quickly the value of quiet diplomacy, the strength in patience, the power of understanding. As we prepared to depart, the village elder approached me directly. He handed me a small carving, eyes filled with quiet wisdom. "Remember this," he said softly. "Strength lies not just in steel, but in knowing when to sheath it." Leaving that shore, I felt changed once more, childhood receding further, replaced by lessons only the world beyond home could teach. The sword at my side felt lighter somehow, its weight now shared with newfound understanding. Our voyage continued, each day filled with quiet growth, each night deepening bonds among us. We spoke less often, but when we did, our words carried deeper meanings, forged by shared hardship and quiet triumph. I watched my father closely, saw his pride in silent glances, felt his trust in small gestures. I knew clearly he saw who I was becoming, even as I myself began to see it too. We sailed onward, each sunrise drawing us toward new horizons, each sunset burying our pasts gently, leaving us ever stronger, ever more certain that this was our path, chosen not lightly, but knowingly. The sea eventually carried us homeward, though the village that greeted our return seemed smaller, somehow changed. Its houses stood exactly as we had left them, but the air felt different, heavier with memory, thickened by experiences that those who stayed behind could never fully understand. My mother welcomed us quietly, her embrace firm and warm. She studied my face carefully, noting changes I could not yet name. Her eyes held questions, but she asked none aloud. She simply nodded, accepting the son who had returned, no longer quite a child, not yet fully grown. Life resumed, yet subtly altered. My days were filled now with responsibilities earned through hardship and experience. Men who had watched me grow from infancy now treated me with quiet respect, acknowledging silently that I had shared their burdens, faced their storms, and returned wiser, stronger, changed. It meant this: to leave behind the known, to face uncertainty without flinching, to let go of childhood dreams and step boldly into the lives we were meant to live. My father stood unmoving, his strength steadying us all, and I realized, in that quiet moment, that he too had once felt this way, young, untested, yet certain that answers lay beyond the horizon. And thus began my journey, not across water alone, but into a deeper understanding of myself. I was no longer merely a child, but a traveller, setting out upon the sea's ancient test. The sea taught quickly, lessons written in salt and spray, in hunger and cold. Days blurred into a rhythm, waves rising and falling beneath us, the sky shifting endlessly above. Each sunrise felt like renewal, each sunset a gentle farewell. I watched the older men closely, learning without speaking, following their careful movements, absorbing their quiet strength. They spoke rarely, their words sparse, each syllable weighed carefully. Yet when they did speak, their voices held truths deeper than any tale I'd heard by the fires at home. My father spoke least of all, yet his presence filled the ship, steady as the timbers beneath our feet. I watched him navigate storms with quiet certainty, never raising his voice, never showing doubt. And though he said little to me directly, I understood clearly. He was preparing me for more than sailing, for more than raids or riches. He was teaching me how to be. One night, a fierce storm found us. It roared from the horizon, devouring stars, swallowing the moon whole. Waves rose, towering above the mast, and men who had stood silent and strong shouted urgently to each other, their voices strained but unbroken. I clung to the ropes, fingers numb, breath ragged, every muscle burning as we fought to keep our course. My father moved calmly through chaos, steadying ropes, barking orders with a clarity that cut through the wind's fury. I felt pride surge in my chest even as fear tightened my throat. When morning finally broke, it revealed a battered ship, torn sails hanging limp, faces etched deep with exhaustion. Yet we were alive. We had survived. I stood quietly, watching the men repair the damage, offering silent prayers for those who had not made it. I saw clearly then what it truly meant to be tested, to find strength you didn't know you possessed, to carry losses without breaking. Land appeared not long after, rising from the horizon, dark cliffs edged by dense forest. We approached cautiously, anchor dropping softly offshore. My father led a small group ashore, returning with cautious eyes and measured words. We were not alone. When we stepped onto the beach, my feet sank into sand untouched by any I had known before. Its grains felt sharper, the air held scents unknown, earth, pine, something richer, darker. I felt curiosity and apprehension wrestle silently within me. We moved through dense woods, each sound exaggerated, every movement cautious. The forest seemed watchful, whispering softly in the breeze. We soon found signs of those who lived here, paths worn by use, fires cold and carefully buried. Then we discovered the settlement. Silent huts stood empty, meals abandoned, objects scattered hastily, lives interrupted abruptly. Unease settled over us, thick and heavy, each man gripping his blade tightly, eyes scanning shadows for unseen threats. We retreated to a clearing nearby, lighting fires cautiously, voices hushed as we debated what we had found. Nightfall brought a deeper silence, stars cold and distant, the world around us holding its breath. Sleep would not come easily. I sat awake, gripping my sword, eyes searching the darkness. I wondered about those who had lived here, their stories, their lives, and why they had vanished so suddenly. Morning broke tension with movement, figures emerging carefully from the trees, cautious yet unafraid. Their leader, older and steady, stepped forward slowly, raising his hand in greeting, eyes meeting my father's evenly. They spoke quietly, each word measured, careful, testing trust. Eventually, cautious smiles formed, agreements quietly forged. We had found peace, fragile yet real. Days passed in gentle companionship, exchanging cautious stories and careful kindnesses. I learned quickly the value of quiet diplomacy, the strength in patience, the power of understanding. As we prepared to depart, the village elder approached me directly. He handed me a small carving, eyes filled with quiet wisdom. "Remember this," he said softly. "Strength lies not just in steel, but in knowing when to sheath it." Leaving that shore, I felt changed once more, childhood receding further, replaced by lessons only the world beyond home could teach. The sword at my side felt lighter somehow, its weight now shared with newfound understanding. Our voyage continued, each day filled with quiet growth, each night deepening bonds among us. We spoke less often, but when we did, our words carried deeper meanings, forged by shared hardship and quiet triumph. I watched my father closely, saw his pride in silent glances, felt his trust in small gestures. I knew clearly he saw who I was becoming, even as I myself began to see it too. We sailed onward, each sunrise drawing us toward new horizons, each sunset burying our pasts gently, leaving us ever stronger, ever more certain that this was our path, chosen not lightly, but knowingly. The sea eventually carried us homeward, though the village that greeted our return seemed smaller, somehow changed. Its houses stood exactly as we had left them, but the air felt different, heavier with memory, thickened by experiences that those who stayed behind could never fully understand. My mother welcomed us quietly, her embrace firm and warm. She studied my face carefully, noting changes I could not yet name. Her eyes held questions, but she asked none aloud. She simply nodded, accepting the son who had returned, no longer quite a child, not yet fully grown. Life resumed, yet subtly altered. My days were filled now with responsibilities earned through hardship and experience. Men who had watched me grow from infancy now treated me with quiet respect, acknowledging silently that I had shared their burdens, faced their storms, and returned wiser, stronger, changed. Yet beneath familiar routines, I felt restless, a tension coiled within my chest, pulling me always toward the shore, toward horizons unseen. I knew clearly that the world was broader now, that my village, though beloved, was but a single piece of a much larger tapestry waiting to be explored. At night, I sat beside the hearth, listening quietly to tales shared by elders, their stories richer, more layered now that I understood the truths behind their words. Their laughter felt warmer, their sorrows deeper, their wisdom now clear and relevant. I began to recognize that stories held power, shaping understanding, forging bonds, passing wisdom from one generation to the next. My father remained quietly observant, speaking little, yet always aware of my growing restlessness. He offered no direct advice, only subtle guidance through small gestures, silent encouragement in steady glances. He knew, perhaps better than I did myself, that my path led far beyond our quiet village, and he waited patiently for me to see it clearly. One evening, as the fire burned low, he handed me a carefully folded cloak. It was thick, warm, crafted to withstand harsh winds. No words passed between us, but the message was unmistakable. He was giving me permission, his blessing, to follow the calling that pulled me away. The next dawn, I stood again by the fjord, the sea whispering softly, inviting me once more. This time, the horizon held no fear, only promise. My heart felt light, my decision clear. Men gathered quietly at the shore, each nodding respectfully, each understanding without words. My father placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his grip steady, reassuring. Then he stepped back, allowing me space to board the ship, to step forward into the future I alone could forge. The sails filled quickly, catching wind as if eager to carry me forward. The village shrank behind me again, but this time I felt no sadness. Instead, gratitude filled me for my father's quiet strength, my mother's unwavering support, my people's silent trust. I understood then, fully and deeply, the stranger's words. The world is waking. It was not the world alone that had awakened. It was me. The sea stretched ahead, open, endless, inviting. I stood firmly at the prow, ready for whatever lay ahead, certain now that the journey itself, with all its trials, all its lessons, was the true destination. Weeks stretched into months, each day carrying us further from familiar waters, deeper into the unknown. The crew spoke less often, their conversations shorter, each man retreating into himself as if preparing for what lay ahead. Yet their silences felt comfortable, strengthening our bond in ways words could never match. My world narrowed to simple truths, the steady rhythm of rowing, the sound of wind in the sails, the sharp scent of salt air. Yet my mind grew broader, expanding with each new horizon. I learned to read clouds as clearly as any written word, to sense a storm's arrival in the faintest shift of breeze. One morning, a shoreline appeared unlike any we'd seen. Rugged, cliffs looming high, crowned by trees older than any in our forests back home. We approached cautiously, eyes scanning the shore for threats, but only silence met our cautious gaze. We anchored offshore, and I joined the scouting party, stepping carefully onto land. The sand beneath my feet felt coarse, its grains rough and unfamiliar. A path led upward, cutting sharply into dense woods. My heart quickened, curiosity and caution warring inside me. The forest closed around us, its air thick, filled with scents of moss and earth. Shadows shifted silently, each rustle of leaves seeming louder, closer. We moved slowly, carefully, senses alert to every sound, every movement. Eventually, we came upon ruins, ancient stones half buried beneath centuries of growth. Vines twisted through carved symbols, letters long faded, their meanings lost to time. I felt a sudden quiet awe, as if standing before something sacred, forgotten by the world yet waiting patiently to be remembered. We explored cautiously, fingers tracing patterns carved by hands long turned to dust. My mind raced with questions. Who had built this place? What had they believed? Where had they gone? The silence held no answers, only whispers of mystery. That night, we made camp among the ruins, fires casting shadows that danced across ancient stones. Sleep came reluctantly, filled with dreams of voices speaking in languages I couldn't understand, of hands guiding mine in carving symbols whose meanings eluded me. At dawn, we moved onward, deeper into this unknown land, each step pulling me further from childhood memories, each discovery reshaping my understanding of the world. Eventually, we reached a vast clearing where stood a single stone, tall and smooth, unmarked yet clearly important. The men gathered quietly, each sensing the weight of this place without words. My father placed a gentle hand on the stone, his expression solemn, reverent. He turned to me, eyes meeting mine steadily, voice low but clear. Places like this remind us that we are never the first, nor will we be the last to seek answers beyond our shores. His words settled deeply within me, resonating with truths I felt but could not yet articulate. I stepped forward, placing my hand beside his, the stone's cold surface sending a quiet strength flowing through me, grounding me in something larger, older than myself. We returned slowly to our ship, each man silent, thoughtful, carrying quiet respect for the mysteries left behind. The sails filled gently, pulling us away from shore, but I carried the stone's quiet strength within me, knowing it would guide me forward, helping me understand the truths I was meant to discover. Days stretched ahead, filled with quiet reflection and steady progress. My father watched me with quiet pride, recognizing clearly the changes in me, trusting me to find my path, knowing the journey had truly begun. Home greeted us softly once more, yet the fjord felt narrower, the village smaller, its heartbeat slower, quieter. Everything familiar had changed, or perhaps it was simply me who had grown larger. My mind filled now with memories of distant shores, ancient stones, and whispered truths. I watched our arrival from a strange distance, as if seeing it through eyes not entirely my own. My family embraced me warmly, yet their smiles held questions, curiosities they couldn't yet voice. I was no longer entirely the boy who had departed with bright eyes, nor fully the man I was becoming. I lingered in between, caught in transition, unanchored yet unafraid. In the quiet days that followed, the sword I'd once found lay carefully by my side, a constant reminder of journeys both inward and outward. The blade seemed less a warning now, more a quiet companion, a symbol of lessons hard won and those still awaiting discovery. My father spoke little of our travels, yet I sensed he understood the changes in me better than any other. In his quiet glances, in the subtle nods of approval, he communicated his trust, his pride, and something deeper, a recognition that my path was mine alone to follow. Days drifted into weeks, my life now balancing between familiar chores and quiet contemplation by the water's edge. The sea still whispered to me, its voice gentler now, filled with memories of tests endured and wisdom gained. Yet beneath its calm surface, I sensed deeper currents, pulling me once again toward unknown shores. Then came the morning my father called me quietly aside. He held in his hand a small carved pendant, smooth with years, etched with symbols whose meanings felt strangely clear, though never taught. He pressed it into my palm gently, his eyes steady upon mine. "This belonged to your grandfather," he spoke softly, "given to me when I set forth. Now it is yours. Remember always, we voyage not just for ourselves, but for those who came before and those who follow after." His words settled within me, heavy and true. I placed the pendant around my neck, its weight comforting, grounding. A ship was readied quietly, the village once more watching silently, understanding without words. As I stepped aboard, the wood beneath my feet felt different, no longer foreign, but familiar, welcoming. My hand gripped the rail, the sword at my side, the pendant resting firmly against my chest. My father stood upon the shore, his stance solid, unwavering. He raised a hand slowly, a gesture of farewell, of blessing. I nodded deeply in return, gratitude swelling within me, knowing fully now the true weight of his quiet strength. The sails caught the wind swiftly, the ship turning gracefully toward open sea. Behind me lay childhood's safe harbour. Ahead stretched endless waters filled with promise and peril, tests yet unknown, wisdom still awaiting discovery. I breathed deeply, salt air filling my lungs, clarity settling within my heart. I understood now. The sea was never just a path. It was, as I had always known, a test. The first true raid was unlike any voyage I'd known. Trading and exploration had their quiet dignity, but the voyage ahead held a darker promise. Ambition drove us now, ambition and hunger, a desire to prove ourselves not just as sailors, but as warriors. We left home beneath heavy skies, the ship slipping silently into open sea, a quiet urgency rippling through every crewman. My father had not come this time, and his absence left a strange emptiness within me. I felt unanchored, drifting towards something unknown, something that called to a darker part of my heart I had yet to fully meet. Days later, the river appeared, wide and slow, a silver ribbon cutting through green forests. We followed its currents carefully, each bend revealing shores unfamiliar, lush, silent. At night, around fires crackling quietly, the men spoke in low voices, sharing tales of raids past, of bravery and plunder. But beneath their bravado, I sensed unease, a tension that mirrored my own. On the night we reached the village, darkness wrapped around us like a cloak. We approached quietly, our boat slicing silently through water, the shore rising before us like a whispered promise of glory and gain. My fingers gripped the hilt of my sword, the metal cold and strangely foreign, heavy now with purpose rather than curiosity. The village was quiet, sleeping, unaware. Men scattered swiftly into shadows, moving toward houses, storerooms, lives sleeping unaware. In the chaos that quickly followed, I found myself standing alone in the small chapel at the village's heart. Candles flickered gently, shadows shifting across ancient walls. Incense hung thick, familiar yet strange, drawing memories of another quiet sanctuary I'd known once, long ago. A monk stood before the altar, frozen, eyes wide, hands trembling in silent plea. His gaze caught mine, steady, unafraid, quietly defiant. He did not speak, did not beg, simply stared into my eyes, searching deeply, seeing more of me than I wished revealed. My hand tightened on my sword, my pulse racing. I knew what was expected, what my companions were doing elsewhere, yet something within me hesitated. The monk's silent gaze unsettled me, a mirror reflecting truths I wasn't ready to see. Then I heard her voice, soft, commanding, calm. "Eric," she said quietly, and turning, I saw her standing in the doorway, her figure silhouetted by firelight from outside. Her eyes were clear, sharp, focused on mine, seeing past the blade, past the fear, straight into the heart of my hesitation. I lowered my sword slowly, my breath coming unsteadily. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice tight with uncertainty. "Era," she answered simply, stepping forward, her movements graceful, assured. She looked briefly at the monk, nodding gently, assuring him quietly that harm would not come. Then her eyes returned to mine, steady, unwavering. "I know your people," she said calmly, her voice carrying quiet authority. "I have traded at your posts, seen your ships. I know you're more than this." She gestured around, indicating the chaos outside, the echoes of violence and loss. "You're searching," she continued softly, "but you won't find answers in this." Something deep within me stirred, awakened by her quiet certainty. I felt strangely vulnerable beneath her gaze, exposed, yet unafraid. Ira stepped closer, her voice gentle yet firm. "Come," she said quietly. "Let us stop what harm we can." I followed her outside, where fires had already begun to burn low, and the raid was nearing its uneasy end. Her presence calmed the villagers, guiding them softly, her authority respected even by my companions. In the hours that followed, I stayed close by her side, watching how she moved, how she spoke, always calm, always clear, her strength quiet, yet undeniable. Her voice was firm yet compassionate, reassuring villagers, negotiating carefully with the men I had arrived with. By dawn, she had achieved a fragile peace, loss minimized, trust barely established. As we left the village, I glanced back once, seeing Era standing quietly, watching us depart, her expression thoughtful, eyes finding mine one final time. In that quiet gaze lay unspoken promises, truths still to be discovered. Returning to the ship, I felt changed. The raid had not brought the glory I'd imagined, but it had brought clarity in ways unexpected. Era had awakened something within me, something stronger and deeper than ambition or greed. I carried her quiet strength with me, even as the shore disappeared behind us, knowing clearly our paths would cross again, knowing clearly that hers was the voice I had been waiting quietly, unknowingly, to hear. Months passed, and though I returned home from that first raid, my thoughts lingered stubbornly behind, anchored to the memory of Era's calm gaze, her steady voice, the quiet strength that had resonated within me. Life resumed around me, familiar and comforting in its routines, yet somehow incomplete, as though an essential piece had been left upon distant shores. The sea called again, as I knew it would, and soon I found myself aboard ships more often than on solid ground. Yet my reasons had changed. It was no longer glory or ambition alone that drew me outward, but the quiet hope of seeing her again, of finding answers that only she seemed capable of revealing. On each voyage, I asked quietly at each port, listening for any word, any whisper of the woman named Era, who could still warriors with nothing more than her quiet voice. Yet months passed without news. Her presence felt only in fleeting dreams. Memories etched deeply into my restless heart. Then one cold, starlit night, while warming ourselves around a fire at a distant trade post, I saw her again. She stood quietly at the fire's edge, wrapped in furs, her dark hair catching the firelight like woven silk. My breath caught, the sudden reality of her presence momentarily overwhelming me. "Eric," she greeted softly, as if no time had passed, as if the months between had never existed. Her calm eyes held mine, unafraid, inviting me closer with silent welcome. We sat together beneath cold stars, sharing stories softly, our words careful, precise, each conversation a step deeper into truths we had yet to fully explore. Era spoke quietly of her village, of family and history, of the quiet strength required to protect peace amidst the chaos our world seemed drawn to. I listened closely, finding in her calm words a wisdom I'd long sought but never discovered. Her voice carried a quiet authority, steadying my restless heart, drawing forth honesty I'd buried deep within. As the days passed, our conversations deepened. I shared with her truths I'd never voiced aloud. The emptiness raids had left within me, the quiet grief of seeing ambition turn to hollow gain. She listened without judgment, her quiet acceptance lifting burdens I hadn't known I carried. "You're learning," she said softly one evening. Firelight reflected gently in her clear eyes. Ambition is not the enemy. It's ambition without purpose, without wisdom, that leads men astray. Her words resonated deeply, offering clarity I had long sought. In Era's quiet presence, I began to see clearly a different path forward, one defined not by conquest or violence, but by quiet strength, compassion, the courage to heal rather than harm. On the day we parted again, standing at the edge of the cold northern sea, Ira handed me a small carved token, smooth from careful shaping, its symbols speaking softly of protection and wisdom. "To remind you," she said quietly, her voice gentle yet firm, "that true strength lies in choosing wisely what we carry forward and what we leave behind." I watched her ship fade into distant mists, holding tightly to her gift, feeling its quiet strength echoing within me. Returning home this time felt different. I carried clarity instead of restlessness, wisdom in place of hollow ambition. My companions sensed this quiet change, noting my words fewer, my actions softer, yet carrying deeper strength. My father saw it clearly, acknowledging my growth with silent approval, pride clear in his steady gaze. The village, too, noticed the quiet shift within me, respected by warriors, trusted by elders, welcomed warmly at every hearth. Yet still, my heart remained elsewhere, waiting patiently, knowing now that my true journey lay not only in raids or distant seas, but in discovering what era had quietly awakened within me. Spring returned gently, softening the ice along our fjord, awakening memories of distant shores and whispered conversations beneath endless stars. The village prepared quietly for another voyage, loading ships carefully, speaking in hushed voices, their eyes filled with familiar anticipation. Yet this time, my heart held no restless hunger, only calm certainty, drawn from the strength Era had quietly instilled. I boarded our ship with steady steps, the carved token she had given me resting gently against my chest. Its touch was grounding, comforting, a quiet reminder of purpose beyond ambition. The sea stretched open before us, inviting but not urging, guiding but not demanding. We sailed onward through gentle waters, each day a quiet journey into reflection, each night a chance to share wisdom softly with companions who saw clearly the quiet strength that now guided me. I spoke less, listened more, my words measured, thoughtful, carrying the weight of lessons learned not in victory, but in quiet reflection. At each port my inquiries remained careful, listening softly for word of Ira, hoping quietly for paths to cross once more. Yet months passed without news, and though disappointment lingered gently, I felt no despair, only quiet patience, trusting our paths would align again in their proper time. Finally, as summer deepened, we returned to that same distant village by the wide river, the place I'd first met Era, the village that had altered my path. I stepped ashore with quiet anticipation, my heart steady, open. She appeared at the village edge, as if she'd sensed our arrival, her posture calm, welcoming, her eyes holding quiet joy, softened by subtle relief. Our greeting required few words, only shared silence, our eyes speaking clearly what voices might stumble to convey. In the days that followed, we worked quietly together, strengthening bonds, trading carefully, restoring trust slowly damaged by raids and past aggression. Villagers watched us closely, their caution fading gently with each soft exchange, each careful gesture of respect. At night, by quiet fires, we shared stories openly, each conversation a careful dance, each word carrying quiet truths. Era's wisdom unfolded softly, guiding my understanding deeper, helping me grasp fully the weight and cost of choices once made recklessly. One evening, beneath endless stars, Ira took my hand gently, her touch steady, grounding. Her eyes searched mine softly, revealing quiet vulnerability she rarely allowed others to see. "I've watched you change," she whispered gently, her voice rich with quiet emotion. "You carry strength now, strength earned quietly, honestly." My heart quickened softly, her words touching truths within me I'd scarcely admitted. Her closeness felt comforting, her presence deeply familiar, as if I'd always known her, even in dreams yet unremembered. "You awakened that strength," I told her quietly, my voice steady, sincere. "It was always yours to claim," she answered softly, her eyes clear, certain. "I only reminded you where to look." Days turned swiftly to weeks, filled with quiet purpose and gentle companionship. We moved through routines together, each task shared easily, our rhythms aligning naturally, silently acknowledging a bond deeper than friendship, stronger than simple affection. When the time came to leave, standing together at the river's edge, the quiet ache of parting settled deeply within me. Yet Era's gaze was clear, reassuring, her words gentle, unwavering. "Paths cross again when meant to," she said softly, her voice steady, eyes filled with quiet trust. "Hold on to what we've shared. Let it guide you clearly until our roads merge again." As our ship drifted quietly away, I watched her figure shrink slowly, yet her presence never diminished within me. She remained, a steady compass guiding quietly toward clarity, wisdom, and purpose. The return voyage passed softly, filled with quiet reflection, each mile sailed drawing deeper understanding from lessons carefully shared. I felt no restlessness, no hollow ambition, only calm certainty of who I had quietly become, shaped by loss and wisdom, strengthened by Era's quiet presence. Home received us warmly, the village greeting softly familiar, yet I knew clearly now, with quiet certainty, that while this was home, my heart belonged not only here, but also to distant shores and quiet wisdom gained from a woman who saw through me clearly, guiding me patiently toward becoming whole. Winter fell heavily, cloaking our village in snow and silence, yet warmth filled my family's home, softened by hearthfire and steady voices. In that quiet season, my thoughts frequently turned to Era, her calm wisdom, her quiet strength, the gentleness of her touch, and the unspoken depth of her gaze. I carried the small carved token she had given me, its surface worn smooth by restless fingertips, a constant reminder of lessons still unfolding. One evening, as the fire burned low and the house lay quiet, My father broke his customary silence. He studied me carefully, eyes thoughtful, patient. When next you sail, he spoke gently, I sense it may not be solely for trade or adventure. He needed no reply, but my quiet nod confirmed his intuition. His eyes softened with understanding, offering quiet approval without words. When spring thawed ice from the fjord once more, I sailed again, not for raids or restless wandering, but driven quietly by the steady pull of something deeper, something I'd begun to recognize clearly. The simple longing to see Era again, to continue the quiet journey she'd begun within me. We travelled slowly, carefully, trading thoughtfully at villages and ports, each encounter another quiet test of lessons learned, of diplomacy tempered by humility, of respect earned gently rather than demanded. Yet my heart quickened only as we approached Era's village, a quiet anticipation settling warmly within my chest. This time, she stood openly awaiting our arrival, smiling gently, her presence a quiet welcome that filled the space between us effortlessly. We embraced softly, the touch familiar now, comforting, each heartbeat quietly affirming what words had yet to openly declare. Days slipped gently past, filled with careful exchanges and quiet collaboration, the trust between our peoples deepening through patience, through Era's quiet diplomacy, and my companion's newfound caution and respect. One quiet evening, as twilight painted the sky softly, Era and I stood by the river's edge. Her eyes reflected the fading sun, her expression thoughtful, open. Eric, she spoke softly, her voice carrying gently across still waters. Do you understand now the difference between power and strength? I considered quietly before answering, her question not demanding haste, but careful reflection. Power, I finally said, is loud, demanding. It takes, it conquers, it leaves scars. But strength. I hesitated softly, eyes meeting hers. Strength is quiet, patient. It heals, it builds, it stays. Her smile warmed gently, eyes shining softly with quiet pride. Then you've truly learned, she said, stepping closer, her hand gently finding mine, fingers intertwining softly. And I see clearly, she continued quietly, that our paths are no longer separate. Her words settled deeply within me, truths I'd sensed but never dared voice aloud. We stood quietly together, hands clasped gently, hearts aligned clearly, steadily. In the weeks that followed, our bond grew openly, recognized quietly by villagers, honored silently by my companions. Each moment shared felt deeply precious, each conversation a gentle exploration of truths we'd long sensed, now finally allowed clear expression. As our departure approached, the quiet ache of parting settled deeply within us. Yet Era's eyes held no sadness, only quiet certainty, calm trust. This is not goodbye, she whispered softly, her voice steady, reassuring. Our stories are woven closely now, bound by threads stronger than distance. Returning home this time felt different, heavier, yet somehow lighter, filled now with quiet purpose and the deep assurance of connection. My companions noticed clearly the new weight within my silence, the quiet strength now fully awakened. Back at the village, my father greeted me softly, eyes searching mine gently. He saw clearly the depth of change, the quiet certainty I'd brought home, and simply nodded, a gentle gesture acknowledging fully that I'd found clearly what he'd long hoped for me, a purpose deeper than ambition, a strength forged gently in quiet truths and lessons, softly taught by a woman whose quiet presence had forever altered my path. Autumn deepened quietly, and our village settled into the rhythm of harvest, the air scented by earth and wood smoke, the days filled with quiet work, the nights offering comfort beside familiar hearths. Yet within me, a quiet restlessness stirred, not the hunger of youth, but the steady pull of something deeper, something certain, yet still out of reach. My thoughts turned ever toward Era. Her absence felt keenly in silent moments, in the spaces between conversations, in the quiet hours before dawn. Each memory carried warmth, clarity, a quiet strength I'd come to rely upon even from afar. I carried her token always, the carved symbols worn gently smooth by the silent touch of fingertips, a subtle anchor to truths I'd learned beside her. As winter began to tighten its grasp once more, I felt change approaching softly, not sudden nor loud, but certain and undeniable. My father watched me closely, recognizing quietly the shifts that moved within me, understanding without words, offering silent approval as I prepared to journey once again. When the ice melted gently from the fjord, our ships were readied carefully, not for war or raids, but for trade, exploration, for connection and careful diplomacy. I boarded calmly, purposefully, feeling clearly the quiet certainty that this voyage would carry me closer to truths I had yet to fully embrace. The journey passed steadily, each day quietly measured, each port carefully visited, friendships and alliances gently strengthened. Yet my heart quickened softly as we approached familiar waters, the river winding slowly toward Ira's village, the place that now felt as much my home as the village I'd left behind. She awaited quietly by the shore, her figure familiar, comforting, her expression filled with gentle anticipation. Our greeting was soft, meaningful, each moment carrying quiet acknowledgement of bonds long established, yet always deepening. The weeks we shared afterward moved softly, each day spent in gentle collaboration, restoring what was broken, healing wounds past left behind, strengthening peace carefully, intentionally. Our quiet companionship grew, each evening spent beneath stars, each conversation deepening softly into truths we'd long sensed yet never fully expressed. One evening, by the gentle river, Ira spoke softly, her voice steady yet revealing vulnerability she rarely allowed to surface. "Eric," she began, eyes searching mine, "do you remember our first meeting? How uncertain, how burdened we both were." I nodded quietly, her words bringing clarity to memory, a gentle ache of gratitude for the moment she'd altered my path. "We've travelled far," she continued softly, her fingers intertwining gently with mine. "And yet, I sense clearly our greatest journey still lies ahead." Her gaze met mine openly, filled with quiet certainty, offering silently what words alone could never fully capture. My heart swelled gently with recognition, acceptance, a quiet knowing of paths now inseparable, destinies quietly woven together. I've learned, I told her softly, that every journey led me here, each mistake, each lesson, bringing clarity to the choice I now see clearly. She smiled softly, eyes shining gently, her presence grounding, reassuring. Then let us choose together, she whispered, her voice carrying quiet strength, steady as the river beside us, certain as the stars above. Our decision settled gently within us, clear, unspoken, yet undeniable. We returned slowly toward the village, our bond quietly deepened, acknowledged softly by villagers, honored quietly by companions, each gesture carrying quiet approval, recognizing the union formed gently, intentionally. When it came time to leave once more, Ara's hand remained in mine softly, her gaze clear, steady, reassuring. This time, I'll come with you, she said gently, her voice quiet yet resolute. My place is not only here but beside you, wherever the path leads. Her words settled warmly within me, quietly filling spaces long hollowed by absence. Together we boarded the ship, companions welcoming her softly, recognizing clearly the quiet strength she brought effortlessly, naturally. The journey home felt different, complete, whole, quietly purposeful. Each day deepened bonds gently, each shared silence comfortable, meaningful. I saw clearly now how my path had always led quietly toward this, toward companionship, wisdom, toward strength born of understanding, and quiet, shared purpose. Returning home, I stepped ashore gently, Ara beside me, her hand in mine, our bond clearly recognized by all who welcomed us. My father greeted us softly, his eyes meeting Ara's openly, approvingly, recognizing clearly the woman whose quiet strength had finally made his son whole. I was home again, but truly, not as the boy who had left. Winter came again, this time with a gentler touch, the quiet settling of snow echoing the calm clarity that filled my days. Ara's presence lingered softly within every quiet conversation, every careful decision made to heal old wounds and build trust anew. My village saw clearly the strength she had quietly nurtured within me, steady, patient, gentle yet unwavering. Yet as peaceful as life had grown, the world beyond our fjord still called softly, inviting us to journey onward, to strengthen ties and share wisdom, gently learned through hardship and humility. Era sensed it too, her gaze often drifting to the quiet horizon, eyes soft with anticipation, ready to venture outward with quiet strength and gentle purpose. In early spring we prepared again, loading our ship carefully, thoughtfully, each task carried out with gentle intention. My father watched quietly from the shore, his gaze calm, trusting, silently proud of who I'd become, the path I'd chosen softly yet clearly. As we sailed away, Era beside me, the familiar weight of departure felt lighter, our path clear, our purpose aligned, our bond quietly unshakable. Days passed gently at sea, filled with quiet moments shared. deepening our understanding, strengthening the quiet trust between us. We reached distant shores, each encounter guided by Era's wisdom and my learned patience, our words carefully chosen, our actions measured, respectful. Villages greeted us openly, recognizing the quiet strength we carried together, trusting the calm sincerity of our intentions. At night, beside gentle fires, villagers listened closely as Iris spoke quietly, her voice steady, compassionate, guiding them softly toward peace, healing the wounds left by violence and fear. I watched her silently, pride swelling softly within me, deep gratitude for the woman who had reshaped my heart and path. One evening, beneath clear stars, a village elder approached us quietly, his eyes wise, searching. "Eric, Era," he spoke softly, his voice gentle yet firm. "Your presence brings calm and healing, yet you carry deeper wisdom than your years might suggest." Era smiled gently, her gaze open, humble. "Wisdom comes not from years alone," she replied softly, "but from seeing clearly the cost of choices made and learning quietly, patiently, to choose differently." The elder nodded slowly, thoughtfully, recognizing truths shared gently, openly. "You have found strength together," he spoke, his voice quietly approving. "Guard it carefully, for such bonds bring hope to those still finding their way." His words settled warmly within us, a quiet affirmation of paths chosen, of lessons softly taught by hardship, by love patiently nurtured, by clarity earned gently through journeys both outward and inward. We travelled onward, village to village, our bond quietly strengthening, our purpose clear, unwavering. Era's presence beside me brought steady calm, quiet courage, each decision easier, each challenge softened by the gentle certainty of our shared path. Finally, returning home again, our ship sailed gently into the fjord, the village awaiting softly, expectantly. My father stood quietly at the shore, his gaze proud, welcoming, recognizing clearly the woman who had made me whole, whose quiet wisdom now guided us both. Stepping ashore, Era's hand in mine, I felt deeply, clearly, that my true becoming lay not in conquest or ambition, but in quiet strength, in love chosen softly, purposefully, in wisdom carried gently forward from a woman whose quiet presence had shaped my heart and destiny. I returned home, truly, finally, but not as the boy who left. Time moved gently, slipping quietly through seasons like water through open hands. Era and I built our lives with quiet care, the village our foundation, strengthened slowly by trust, patience, and the steady certainty of shared purpose. We watched together as the world changed around us, new faces arriving with ideas fresh and unfamiliar, voices quietly introducing thoughts of new ways to live and think and build. Yet within that slow evolution, Ira and I remained constant, two quiet anchors amid gentle shifts. But peace, even gently nurtured, is fragile. It began as softly as a whisper, a distant cry, a shift in the wind, something uncertain yet troubling. Then ships appeared, dark shapes against the horizon, their intentions clear in the sharp lines of their sails and the silence of their approach. The village stirred uneasily, voices rising softly at first, then sharper, louder. Men reached instinctively for weapons long unused, blades grown unfamiliar in hands softened by peace. I took up my sword once again, its weight instantly familiar, heavier now with purpose than memory alone could carry. The attack broke suddenly, violence crashing like waves against our shores, fires sparking swiftly, shattering our carefully built calm. Raiders surged from ships with cries echoing sharply, the clash of weapons ringing through the night, harsh and relentless. I met the enemy quickly, blade against blade, my body remembering battles long past, each swing careful, precise, yet my heart heavy, burdened by the knowledge that the quiet strength we'd cultivated was once more tested by violence. I fought fiercely, each blow careful, measured, desperation lending speed to weary arms. My thoughts turned constantly toward Era, fear tightening painfully in my chest, eyes searching the chaos for her steady figure, longing for the reassurance of her safety, her quiet strength. Then I saw her, standing calmly amid the chaos, guiding villagers quietly towards safety, her voice steady even amid fear, her presence a point of calm within the storm. My heart surged briefly with relief until I glimpsed movement, an attacker moving swiftly, unseen by her, closing in with silent threat. I shouted her name desperately, voice raw with fear, but noise swallowed my warning as flames roared and steel clashed. I fought through the turmoil, each step heavy, slowed by bodies and debris, heart pounding painfully, fear choking me as the distance closed too slowly. Era turned too late, eyes meeting her attackers with calm defiance, steady courage even in danger. But bravery alone could not stop the blade that struck swiftly, mercilessly, tearing into the quiet strength I'd cherished so deeply. She fell softly, her form crumpling gently, gracefully, as if even in death, she refused violence any victory beyond the immediate loss. I reached her finally, heart shattered, hands trembling, gathering her gently into my arms, shielding her from further harm, even though it was too late. Her eyes found mine, calm, gentle, no accusation, no fear, only quiet sadness, an apology in her soft gaze for the grief her departure would bring. "Eric," she whispered, voice faint, yet still carrying quiet strength. "Remember what we chose." I shook my head weakly, tears spilling silently down my face, unable to voice the denial choking within me, begging her silently, desperately to stay, even as I felt her strength ebbing softly from my grasp. She held my gaze gently until the quiet light of her eyes dimmed, until her breathing slowed softly, then stopped, leaving silence heavier than any I'd ever known. The battle raged on around me, its noise distant, meaningless now, my thoughts tangled in grief, my heart broken, still holding gently the woman who had quietly reshaped my world, whose absence now defined it. Yet grief gave way to fury, a quiet rage building within me, clear, purposeful, demanding action. I laid Era down gently, promising silently that grief would wait, that first, justice would speak with quiet certainty. Taking up my sword again, I rose, eyes clear, heart hardened softly yet decisively, stepping quietly into chaos, each strike purposeful, precise, A silent vow whispered clearly with every blow. Era would be remembered. The village rallied quietly behind me. The sight of Era fallen strengthening their resolve, steadying their hearts. Together, we drove back our attackers, each battle cry tempered by loss, each sword swing carrying the weight of our shared grief, until finally, silence settled once more upon our shores. The battle had ended, but in its wake, the quiet cost of what we'd lost lay heavily upon us all. No victory celebrated, no songs sung, only quiet mourning, and the gentle task of honoring the woman who had taught us all what true strength meant. In the days following the attack, the village moved silently, the air thick with grief and the quiet labor of rebuilding. Every task carried the weight of absence, every voice hushed by memory of loss. Homes were slowly repaired, walls raised again. Yet the heart of our community, the quiet strength that Era had embodied, felt irreparably shattered. I moved through each day mechanically, my body carrying out tasks my heart no longer recognized. Villagers approached me gently, respectfully, their eyes filled with quiet understanding, yet offering no words. For what words could ease the ache of Era's absence? At night, beside a hearth now unbearably empty, my thoughts circled endlessly back to her final moments. The calm in her eyes, the quiet strength in her last words. Remember what we chose. The words echoed softly, relentlessly, a gentle command from beyond the silence she left behind. Weeks turned slowly into months, the village slowly reshaping itself, but nothing ever truly returned to normal. The calm certainty Era had brought had been replaced by a fragile peace, a wary quiet, and I saw clearly that some wounds heal only superficially. Beneath the surface, scars remain, quietly defining us. With time, the world beyond our shores began to change. Ships arrived more frequently, but now carrying merchants rather than warriors, their vessels loaded with goods, scrolls, parchments, and ink. Voices once loud with battle cries now spoke softly of trade agreements, records, written histories captured neatly on delicate pages. The younger villagers embraced these changes readily, their eyes wide, eager, seeking knowledge through ink rather than steel. Swords, once cherished, began gathering dust in quiet corners, rusting slowly, silently. My own blade, the one that had failed to protect Era, was wrapped carefully, hidden away, a painful reminder of loss and limitations. I watched quietly, feeling disconnected, anchored to memories slipping steadily away, my story becoming less relevant to a world moving softly forward without me. New leaders emerged within the village, voices gentle yet determined, younger minds shaping our path ahead, their hands clean of the blood that stained mine. Yet even as the world moved forward, I found myself retreating inward, memories becoming my only companions, quietly preserved in the solitude of my home, kept alive by candlelight and silence. Faces of old companions faded softly into shadows, replaced by new voices I scarcely recognized. Then, one quiet evening, as twilight softly painted our shores, a gentle knock at my door drew me from restless contemplation. Opening it slowly, I saw a boy standing uncertainly, his eyes wide, curious, filled with questions he'd clearly carried a long while. "Tell me," He began softly, nervously, about the sword you once carried. His request startled me gently, awakening memories sharp with grief yet softened by time, taking me back to distant shores and battles long ended, to a woman whose quiet voice still echoed gently in my heart. I invited him inside quietly, settling us by the fading hearth, and carefully unwrapped the sword, its blade catching soft firelight, reflecting gently the countless stories it had witnessed, stories now resting quietly within my heart. This sword, I spoke gently, my voice softened by memory and loss, belonged to someone who never returned. He listened closely, eyes wide, and in the quiet eagerness of his gaze, I saw something clearly. The gentle purpose of stories passed forward, the quiet legacy of lessons learned through hardship, through love, through loss. He returned often afterward, each evening asking softly for stories, each tale carefully chosen, woven gently around memories of strength, of courage, of wisdom earned through grief, of a woman named Era, whose quiet strength still shaped me. Slowly, I recognized in this boy a quiet reflection of who I once was, hungry for understanding, searching gently for truths yet to be discovered. I shared with him softly, carefully, not only stories of battles and voyages, but also gentle truths learned quietly beside Era, lessons of compassion, patience, and strength held gently, silently, yet resolutely. Over time, our bond grew quietly. He became my student, a keeper of stories, a carrier of memories that might otherwise fade. And in this quiet exchange, I finally began to see clearly that though the world changed softly around me, Ira's legacy endured gently, purposefully, carried forward not by blades or battles, but through quiet wisdom, stories softly spoken, and truths carefully shared. Yet, even as the quiet comfort of storytelling eased the ache of loss, a deeper loneliness lingered within me, a shadow beneath the soft light of memory. The boy's visits brought warmth, but when he left each evening, the silence that remained felt sharper, colder, a stark reminder of the solitude that now quietly defined my life. Seasons passed gently, the village continuing its steady evolution, the past drifting quietly away like smoke from a fading fire. Scrolls and parchments filled shelves, stories inked carefully, preserved neatly, their voices clear yet distant. My own stories remained quieter, held softly in whispers beside hearth fires, shared only in quiet conversations with those few who still sought wisdom through spoken words. One crisp autumn evening, beneath a sky painted in hues of soft twilight, the boy asked quietly of Ira, a story I'd shared only sparingly, guarded carefully by grief and memory. His eyes watched gently, waiting patiently for words I hesitated to speak aloud. Yet looking into his eager gaze, I saw clearly the quiet purpose in telling even painful truths, in honoring not just strength, but vulnerability, not only victory, but loss. Taking a slow breath, I began softly, speaking gently of Ira's quiet courage, of the strength she shared generously, and the loss that had fractured my heart. The boy listened quietly, eyes thoughtful, respectful, and when I finished speaking, he asked softly, "Do you still miss her?" I nodded quietly, honestly, my voice gentle yet firm. "Every day. but missing her reminds me of what matters, what truly endures beyond loss. He considered quietly, his young face thoughtful, then spoke softly, earnestly. I want to remember her too. Can I tell others her story? His request touched me gently, deeply, a quiet recognition of Era's legacy, of the importance in stories carried forward. I smiled softly, nodding clearly. Yes, I answered gently. Stories are meant to be shared. In telling them, we honor those we've lost. After that evening, the boy's voice quietly echoed through the village, telling carefully the stories I'd shared with him, of journeys and battles, of wisdom and courage, of Era and her quiet strength, of the love and loss that had shaped me. Slowly, gently, her memory spread softly, carried forward not by ink alone, but by voices speaking gently, carefully, honoring quietly the legacy she'd left. Over time, I saw clearly how the boy changed, how the quiet truths he learned shaped him gently into a thoughtful young man, a careful leader in the making. The village too softened quietly, embracing not just progress and change, but also reverence for quiet traditions, for wisdom gently spoken, for memories carefully preserved. And slowly, carefully, I recognized clearly that my own purpose was shifting, that my quiet legacy lay not in steel or parchment alone, but in the gentle mentoring of those who would carry wisdom forward, who would speak softly of the woman whose quiet strength had changed our lives. Yet even in recognizing this quiet purpose, the loneliness lingered gently, a silent companion in evenings spent beside a hearth that no longer held warmth for two. Era's absence remained softly felt, the spaces she'd filled quietly empty, a gentle ache carried forward always. But as time moved forward, the ache softened gently, becoming a quiet reminder of the love we'd shared, the strength she'd given freely, the legacy quietly entrusted to my care. Each story shared gently eased the ache, transforming grief softly into gratitude, loss carefully into quiet strength. In the quiet clarity of those moments, I understood fully what Era had always known, that true strength lies not in victory alone, but in how we carry loss, in how we remember, in how we choose gently, patiently, to heal, to teach, to quietly pass forward the wisdom earned through grief, the love shaped softly by loss. And so each evening, as twilight softened skies above our fjord, I continued quietly to share stories with the boy and others who came gently, respectfully, each tale carefully chosen, each word honoring softly the woman whose quiet strength still lived gently, steadily, within each memory shared. Gradually, the village shifted gently around me, its daily rhythms defined by the younger generation, whose lives moved forward swiftly, eagerly, propelled by curiosity and hope. Yet I found myself increasingly on the edges, a quiet observer, softly disconnected, my purpose now centered solely on memories, on stories told gently, repeatedly, of a woman whose quiet absence still echoed through every corner of my heart. The boy, no longer a boy but growing steadily into manhood, remained a constant visitor, his presence a soft comfort in my solitary days. He brought word of the village's gentle progress, of alliances formed, of ships bearing knowledge rather than warriors, of a new world built carefully upon quiet lessons learned from hardships past. One gentle evening, As twilight painted our shores in hues of soft purple and quiet gold, he arrived earlier than usual, his eyes thoughtful, purposeful, carrying carefully something wrapped in cloth. "I brought you something," he began softly, unwrapping carefully to reveal parchment and ink, tools now common yet still foreign in my hands. "I think it's time to write down the stories," he suggested quietly, respectfully, eyes watching gently for my reaction. My heart tightened softly, a quiet resistance rising within me. Stories felt safest spoken, carried gently by voice alone, each retelling honoring memory carefully, preserving softly what ink could never fully capture. Yet his gaze remained patient, hopeful, filled with gentle reverence for the truths I'd shared quietly, repeatedly, over countless evenings beside fading fires. "Stories kept only in words may fade," he reminded softly. "But if we capture them in ink, they'll endure quietly beyond our lives." I hesitated gently, yet in his voice I heard Ira's quiet wisdom, her steady belief in knowledge, her quiet confidence in stories as foundations of strength. Slowly, carefully, I nodded, accepting gently the parchment offered, my fingers unfamiliar with ink and quill, yet heart quietly certain of purpose. He smiled softly, stepping back respectfully, giving space for the words now ready to flow gently, carefully, onto pages awaiting patiently. In quiet candlelight, night after night, I wrote gently, carefully, translating softly the stories shared aloud into words carefully chosen, each sentence shaped gently by memory, each line honoring quietly the woman whose quiet strength had reshaped my life. The task became slowly a quiet comfort, each evening spent softly recalling memories, capturing gently the quiet lessons learned, the love quietly nurtured, the grief patiently endured. The ache of loss softened quietly, transformed carefully into quiet gratitude with each word inked gently, purposefully. As the parchment filled softly, steadily, the boy, now a young man, took each page carefully, reverently, carrying quietly my words outward, sharing gently with others in the village the stories of Era, the truths softly earned through hardship, the quiet strength shaped by loss and love. Slowly, I saw clearly the gentle transformation around me, villagers now speaking softly of wisdom shared carefully, stories once spoken gently by firesides now held reverently in ink, preserved quietly for generations yet unborn. My heart found gentle peace in this quiet evolution, recognizing clearly, softly, the quiet purpose fulfilled, that in sharing memory openly, in translating grief carefully into wisdom, Era's legacy endured gently, beyond my voice alone, carried forward softly in ink, in words preserved quietly, patiently, in hearts softened gently by stories shared. And as the years passed quietly, my own role shifted gently, softly, from storyteller to quiet observer, watching gently the seeds of wisdom, once quietly planted, grow softly, steadily, shaping gently the village's quiet strength, guiding softly the next generation toward a future carefully shaped by memory, by quiet courage, by gentle truth. In these quiet moments, I finally understood fully what Era had always known deeply, that true legacy lies not in battles or victories, but in quiet strength carried forward by those who remember softly, who speak gently, who pass forward carefully, purposefully, the stories that quietly define who we truly are. One quiet winter evening, as frost gently lined the village paths, I found myself standing alone at the fjord's edge, watching silently as the stars began to emerge above still waters. Their reflections shimmered gently, memories woven softly within each glimmering point of light. I stood quietly, breathing deeply, allowing the cold air to fill my lungs, the silence to calm my heart, and felt clearly, for the first time in many years, a gentle peace settling within me. It was not the peace of forgetting, but the quiet comfort of acceptance, a recognition that memories, even painful ones, could be carried gently forward, honoured through the quiet sharing of stories softly told. The boy, now a young man, wise beyond his years, approached quietly, his footsteps muffled by snow. He stood beside me silently, gazing thoughtfully out across the fjord, his presence comforting, reassuring. "You've taught me more than stories," he spoke softly, his voice gentle yet steady. "You've taught me how to remember, how to honour those who came before us." I turned quietly toward him, his words filling me gently with quiet pride, a warmth softening the ache that still lingered within my heart. "Then you've learned well," I replied softly. "Memory is our truest legacy, the way we keep those we've lost close, the way we carry their strength forward." He nodded gently, understanding clear in his quiet gaze. "I promise," he said softly, "I'll never let her story fade." My heart filled quietly with gratitude, a soft certainty settling within me that Era's legacy was secure, carried gently forward by those who'd listened carefully, who'd learned deeply, who now understood fully the quiet strength she embodied. I placed a gentle hand upon his shoulder, turning slowly toward home, knowing clearly my role had shifted once more. From guardian of memories to quiet observer of their careful passing into hands younger, steadier, strong enough now to carry forward softly what we had chosen so long ago. It was never about glory. I spoke softly, my voice clear, gentle, certain. It was about being remembered whole. We walked slowly back toward the village, our footsteps quiet in the fresh snow, stars softly illuminating our path. The village lay gently ahead, warm firelight glowing from windows, a quiet comfort amidst winter's hush. Pausing briefly, I turned once more, looking back across the fjord, toward distant shores that held memories still gently alive in my heart. I felt Era's presence beside me, her quiet strength undiminished by absence, her memory a steady companion in quiet moments such as these. The young man beside me watched carefully, eyes thoughtful, quietly sensing my contemplation. "You still look for her sometimes," he said softly, voice gentle, understanding. I nodded slowly, a quiet admission. "Always. But now I see her differently, not just as memory, but as part of who I am, as part of who we all have become." He considered this quietly, respectfully, then smiled gently. "Maybe that's what remembering truly means," he said softly. "To let someone live on within us, guiding us quietly." His words settled deeply, gently within me, a clear reminder of the quiet truth Era had always known. We moved onward, side by side, returning gently to the warmth of village life, our hearts quietly aligned in purpose, bound softly by stories shared, by memories honoured, by legacy carefully carried forward. That evening, by my hearth, I took up ink and parchment again, writing carefully, quietly, capturing softly this moment, this realization, this gentle clarity. And as I wrote, I felt a gentle peace, a quiet knowing that these words, these stories, would endure softly, steadily, beyond my years, beyond my voice, carried forward gently, purposefully, by those who would remember, by those who would choose carefully to keep memories alive. I knew then, with quiet certainty, that while loss had reshaped me deeply, it had not defined me. Instead, I had chosen, as error had taught me, to carry loss quietly, patiently, lovingly, transforming grief carefully into quiet strength, into wisdom softly spoken, into stories gently remembered. And as I placed the final words onto parchment softly, carefully, I knew clearly, deeply, that I had honoured what error and I had chosen long ago, a quiet life shaped not by glory, but by being remembered whole. Years slipped quietly by, and the village transformed gently around me. Youthful voices filled spaces where silence had lingered, their eager conversations floating softly through the crisp air. Paths I'd once trodden heavily, burdened by grief, now welcomed new footsteps, lighter, hopeful, untouched by sorrow's quiet weight. I watched the village flourish, carefully observing from the gentle shadows of quiet corners and fire-lit doorways. My role had shifted fully now, no longer the steady hand guiding ships through storms, or the sword-bearer standing watchful upon the shore. Instead, I'd become a quiet witness, the silent keeper of memories, the gentle guardian of stories. I spoke rarely, finding that silence carried greater weight than words hastily shared. But when I did speak, the villagers paused carefully, listening closely, respectful of the quiet wisdom earned through years of careful reflection, loss, and gentle acceptance. Era's memory lived strongly in each shared story, her quiet strength resonating softly through my words, passing carefully into younger hearts. Gradually, even as my body softened, my presence became one of quiet comfort. Children sought me out gently, curiously, their eyes wide with wonder, requesting softly tales of voyages, of distant shores, of quiet bravery found in moments others overlooked. I offered these stories patiently, each word chosen gently, honouring the truth that Era and I had cherished, that life's greatest journeys happen quietly, within. Then one day, without fanfare or expectation, a child was born, the grandson of the boy I had mentored, the young man who had carried forward softly the gentle legacy of stories and memory. The child, born strong and healthy, bore eyes reminiscent of Era's, clear, steady, quietly determined. I felt a gentle stirring within me, a quiet warmth I hadn't known in years, a renewal of purpose in watching this child explore the world barefoot, just as I once had, filled with quiet curiosity and gentle wonder. My heart softened gently, each moment shared with him reminding me clearly of the delicate beauty of beginnings. He visited often, growing slowly, steadily, his laughter filling spaces I'd believed would remain forever quiet. We walked gently through the woods together. Paths I'd trodden countless times alone now brightened softly by his presence. He spoke gently, eagerly, asking questions softly, carefully, his mind filled with quiet curiosity, a mirror to my own youth. "Why are stories important?" he asked softly one afternoon, as we rested quietly beneath trees whose leaves whispered gently above us. I paused carefully, reflecting on the countless evenings spent speaking softly beside hearth fires, stories drifting gently outward, carried by hearts that had listened closely, remembered carefully. "Stories teach us who we are," I replied softly, my voice gentle yet clear. "They remind us where we've come from and guide us quietly toward who we might become." He considered this thoughtfully, then smiled gently, eyes brightening quietly. "Will you teach me?" he asked, his voice soft yet eager. My heart filled quietly with gratitude, recognizing clearly the quiet truth of legacy, not in swords or ships or battles won, but in quiet moments such as these, in stories shared softly between generations, in wisdom carefully carried forward. "Yes," I replied gently, placing a careful hand upon his shoulder. "I'll teach you everything I know." And so began a quiet season of gentle mentoring, each day softly shared beneath the watchful eyes of trees, beside waters calm and reflective, under skies vast and gently reassuring. I spoke softly, carefully, sharing not only stories of distant journeys, but truths quietly learned beside error, the gentle courage in compassion, the quiet strength in patience, the careful beauty in choosing kindness even when faced with loss. The boy listened gently, his heart open, eager, his mind absorbing softly the lessons offered, wisdom planting quietly, patiently, roots growing softly, deeply, in quiet soil carefully prepared. In these quiet exchanges, I felt a gentle release within myself, a quiet letting go of the burdens I'd carried so long. Grief remained, but softer now, a quiet companion rather than a sharp ache. Memories of Ira felt warmer, less tethered to loss, more fully embraced as quiet blessings, a gentle presence guiding me still. The boy grew slowly into understanding, each story shaping him gently, purposefully, preparing him quietly for paths yet unknown. Villagers noticed softly the changes within him, the quiet confidence, gentle compassion, the patient strength he carried easily, naturally. My heart recognized clearly that this was Ara's legacy, not only words written on parchment, but truths gently lived, quiet strength carried forward in young hearts prepared carefully, lovingly. The days turned gently, and the fire that had long burned in my hearth softened quietly to embers, its warmth no longer necessary as my heart found gentle peace, comforted softly by the quiet certainty that the stories, the truths, the memories we'd chosen would live on, carried gently, softly forward by the careful hands of those who followed. As the years deepened, I grew quieter still, my voice rarely needed, my presence alone enough to remind villagers of stories softly told and lessons gently learned. My heart held no more restless longings, only quiet gratitude for what life had given, for the legacy carefully nurtured, for the gentle peace now surrounding me in my final season. The boy, now a young man with quiet wisdom of his own, visited often, bringing news of the village's gentle progress, of children who eagerly listened to his careful retellings, of elders who nodded knowingly at truths long carried softly within their hearts. He had become the keeper of our quiet legacy, trusted fully, deeply by those who had learned softly from us both. One quiet afternoon, as sunlight fell gently through the doorway of my home, he arrived with the child, my young grandson, now old enough to truly understand the weight and quiet beauty of our stories. Together they sat before me, eyes gentle, faces open, hearts ready. The young man smiled softly, speaking gently, carefully. "He's ready," he said, quietly confident. My eyes settled softly upon the child, his gaze steady, patient, filled with quiet curiosity. "What would you like to know?" I asked gently, my voice steady despite the quiet frailty that now defined me. He paused carefully, considering his question gently, seriously, then spoke softly, clearly. "Did you ever regret choosing peace?" I considered quietly, allowing memories to flow gently through me. Voyages across endless seas, battles fought and quietly regretted, the gentle wisdom found in Era's steady gaze, the quiet courage in choosing compassion over conquest. "No," I replied softly, gently. "Peace is the hardest choice, but it carries the quietest strength. It lasts beyond battles, beyond swords and ships and glory." The child nodded thoughtfully, understanding softly blooming in his eyes, his heart gently absorbing the truth offered quietly. The young man watched closely, recognition clear in his gaze, his voice soft, respectful. "Is there anything more you wish for him to remember?" I smiled softly, my heart warm, grateful, knowing clearly that these quiet moments would echo gently, long after my voice fell silent. "Remember," I spoke gently, carefully, "that strength is not loud or harsh. True strength lives quietly, softly, patiently. It endures through stories told gently, truths carried forward with quiet purpose." The boy smiled softly, his eyes gently respectful, grateful, promising quietly that these truths would endure, carried carefully within his heart. Days afterward passed softly, my strength fading gently, my body slowly releasing the quiet grip it held on life. Villagers visited respectfully, speaking softly, offering gentle words of gratitude for wisdom shared, for stories softly carried forward. My heart received each visit warmly, peace settling quietly, gently within me, knowing clearly my role was complete. In these quiet days, I found comfort in gentle reflections, moments shared quietly with Era, her presence softly beside me in memories lovingly preserved. The boy and the child visited daily, bringing quiet joy, gentle companionship, filling spaces softly that might otherwise have been lonely. One quiet evening, as twilight gently darkened skies outside my window, they sat quietly beside me, their presence steady, comforting. My heart knew clearly the time had come, the gentle release now approaching softly, steadily. "Will you tell us one more story?" the child asked softly, eyes hopeful yet gentle, voice barely above a whisper. I considered quietly, carefully, then nodded softly, smiling gently, warmly. Yes, I replied softly. One last story. And as my voice filled the quiet room, speaking softly of love gently nurtured, of lessons learned quietly, patiently, of courage found softly within, I felt clearly, fully, that this story was not only mine, it was theirs, carried gently forward by hearts who understood fully, who honoured softly what had truly mattered. As the fire in the hearth softened quietly, embers glowing gently, fading steadily, my voice quieted, the story reaching softly its conclusion. I felt peace settling gently within me, knowing clearly my legacy was secured, in hearts softened by truth, in memories gently preserved, in stories carried quietly, patiently forward. My eyes grew heavy, gently closing, my breathing softening, quieting, peace surrounding me fully, gently. I was here, I whispered softly, clearly, one final truth spoken gently into the quiet air, a quiet affirmation, a gentle farewell. And as silence softly filled the space around me, I released gently, fully, trusting quietly, deeply, that the stories, the truths, the quiet strength we had chosen would endure softly, carried gently, lovingly, forward into generations yet unborn. In the stillness that followed, the quiet room held gently the echoes of every story softly shared, every truth carefully spoken. Though my voice had fallen silent, my heart felt deeply, gently content, aware clearly that I had passed forward what truly mattered. I sensed quietly the gentle movements of those around me, their soft breathing, careful whispers, the tender touch of familiar hands resting gently upon mine. My awareness floated softly between memory and presence, each moment now blending gracefully into the timeless calm of a story quietly concluding. The young man and the child remained beside me, their quiet strength a steady comfort, a gentle reassurance that our legacy was secure. In their hearts lay truths softly planted, wisdom grown gently over years of patience and care. I felt quietly, deeply grateful to leave my story gently in their hands, trusting softly, fully, in the future they would shape. Gradually, the room around me faded gently into warmth and quiet darkness, and my awareness turned inward, drawn softly toward memories that rose gently, clearly, to meet me in quiet welcome. I saw again distant shores, felt gentle winds upon my face, heard softly the whispering sea that had tested me, shaped me, guided me toward truths discovered quietly, patiently. Then, quietly, warmly, Era appeared beside me, her eyes calm, familiar, her presence comforting, steady. She smiled softly, reaching gently toward me, her touch warm, real, her voice a quiet whisper, filled with gentle assurance. You kept your promise. She spoke softly, gently. Our stories live, our truths endure. You chose well. Her words settled deeply, a quiet balm upon my heart, lifting softly any remaining heaviness, granting quiet peace fully, completely. Hand in hand, we stepped forward gently, toward horizons quietly opening before us, into warmth and gentle light, leaving softly behind a world prepared carefully, lovingly, by hearts that would carry forward the stories, the strength, the quiet wisdom we had gently nurtured. My final thoughts were clear, gentle, filled quietly with gratitude, with the quiet certainty that our legacy was now softly secure, held lovingly, patiently, by those who understood fully the quiet strength of remembering. I was here, I whispered once more, a gentle affirmation carried softly into the warmth that welcomed us. And so, quietly, I let go fully, gently, trusting softly, completely, in the quiet strength of those who would follow, knowing clearly that the true story would never truly end, but continue gently, lovingly forward, softly told, carefully remembered, quietly enduring within hearts that listened, understood, and honored gently the quiet strength of choosing peace, of sharing wisdom, of remembering fully that we were here,